Perpetually Exasperated, the podcast where we've chosen to read new, best-selling books from both sides of the political spectrum, so you don't have to, and tell you how at times they've got the right idea, but mostly how they're missing the point of why everything kinda sucks. I'm Joseph.
And I'm the pulsating vein in Joseph's forehead. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing Owned, How Tech Billionaires on the Right Bought the Loudest Voices on the Left, by Eoin Higgins, described by Amazon as a devastating examination of how a cabal of tech billionaires is colluding with once idealistic journalists to create an entirely new media landscape.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a much-needed palate cleanser. So, let's see how this keeps us perpetually exasperated, and why you should be as well.
Well, great thanks to the overlords, finally, for a book worth reading.
No. Don't thank them. Do not be nice to them. Now, that being said, my God, is this legal? It's a political book that's actually worth reading. Praise be!
I think the thing that struck me most immediately is that this book seems to be about the exact kind of person that Tammy Bruce was. A barely liberal right progressive who began on the left for demographic reasons and then switched as soon as their demographic reached sufficient acceptance.
Kinda, to a certain extent. I mean, Glenn Greenwald is gay, and he had a long and what I can only assume loving relationship with his husband down in Brazil before his husband passed away in 2023. But it seems like that his convictions for most of his life were basically libertarian. But there's a quote from page 105 where Jacob Silverman wrote in the New Republic in July 2021 that Greenwald's, quote, embrace of Fox smacks of experience and a well-established contrarian streak, two qualities that have visibly come to the fore in recent years. Greenwald appears on Fox not because he agrees with its personality's odious politics, but because it offers an opportunity to spread his own ideas and to generate subscribers for his Substack, unquote. So it's kind of complicated. Matt Taibbi, though, he seems like a profoundly unpleasant person right out of the gate. From page 120, he apparently wrote in his production, I guess, The Exile, that's with a big X, by the way. Why does everybody like the big X?
It's sexy.
No, it's not. Anyway, quote, the fact is, Russian women with their tight skirts, blowjob-ready lips, and swinging, meaty chests scare the hell out of Western women. Unquote. Yes, I know you're trying not to throw up over there. Yikes. So, Greenwald starts off as sympathetic, if a contrarian bitch, also known as a libertarian, but Taibbi is just this straight up sexist dude who's also a contrarian. Now, to be fair, at the time he was writing this in super hyper capitalist Yeltsin Russia, and they've got a few problems with sexism and whatnot there, so maybe he picked that up along the way. Who knows?
Or maybe he moved there because of it. Who knows?
Who knows? But there's a quote later on page 130 that probably best sums up Taibbi. Quote, media critic Adam Johnson sees Taibbi as a relatively incurious pundit whose analysis is not grounded in anything other than a producerist vision that those who create things are of greater value than those who don't. It's very Gen X, actually, Johnson said. It's like, everyone sucks. Everyone's a hypocrite but me, the one true principled person, unquote. Now, it's usually not a good idea to go into generational politics because, fun fact, generations are not monoliths. Generations are complicated. That being said, this is Gen X we're talking about here. Both Glenn and Matt are Gen X folk. And what is it that really kind of defined Gen X people back then?
Oh, shit if I know.
Yeah, exactly. You can at least point to a bunch of things about the baby boomers. You got Vietnam. You've got the civil rights movement. You can point to millennials and say the Great Recession, 9/11. Really anything going on around this time period. Gen Z is going through a lot of this as well. But what has Gen X been through as a generation, really?
That's true.
So it's really hard to kind of pin down what Greenwald and Taibbi are in regards to political animals. But I don't know, they did back in the day, the 90s and the early 2000s and even the really early 2010s, they did have some leftist chops to them, or at least enough leftist publications where they could be conveniently married to the idea of being part of the left rather than, at the time, the established right.
Yeah, I think it was Glenn Greenwald that was quoted as saying both sides are bad, but the Democrats are less bad prior to his shift rightward. And I think the mistake for a lot of his listeners was assuming that when he said the Democrats are less bad, they meant that he was far on the left, not far on the right.
Yeah, that first quote you mentioned comes from pages 23 and 24. Quote, during the 2000s, Greenwald was more favorable toward Democrats than Republicans, something he described to the author, Higgins, as consistent with his beliefs at that time. This is Greenwald speaking. My view is that, of the two parties, the Democratic Party was better, at least on the issues on which I was most focused. And the problem was that the Democrats just needed better people. A lack of better Democrats was how I would describe my posture. Democrats sucked, but they were still better than Republicans. And the way to make Democrats not suck was to elect better Democrats. Unquote. Now, leave aside everything we now know about Greenwald. Doesn't that thinking sound a little familiar to you?
Maybe a bit.
You may or may not have thought this at one point, multiple points, most of your political career. As a voter.
Hey, that's a career. I go out.
Sure.
I do vote.
You do.
I don't get paid, so I'm an amateur technically.
You are an amateur. You're an intern more than anything.
Oh, no!
But regardless, you and I have thought the exact same thing. Look, the Democrats aren't perfect, but they sure as hell are better than the Republicans, and the solution is to elect better Democrats. That'll solve the problem. And we thought that at the very earliest to Obama in 2008. Fun fact, that was the first time I voted, and boy, I was so happy when he won. Because I was a young back then.
Yes, you were.
So then the disillusionment that followed, yeah, kind of understandable. Kind of get where he's coming from. But also back then, Greenwald was a defiant defender of things that he's against right now. You remember Chelsea Manning?
Yes.
Stalwart defender. Greenwald said, quote, if you want to get a taste for how widespread, warped, and creepy hostility against trans people is, mention Chelsea Manning and survey the bile. Unquote. He said that. He tweeted that on September 10th of 2016. He was right. He's still right. However, 4 years later, seems like he changed his views about it. And when he was asked about it in 2024, last year, by Higgins, Greenwald replied that, quote, he sees trans identity as acting like a kind of affirmative action in liberal and left spaces, where trans people have an advantage over other groups, like gays or lesbians, who are, according to him, almost viewed now as conservative or archaic. He said within LGBT culture, there's this sense that the truly marginalized and oppressed people are not gay men and lesbians, but trans people and people who are non-binary. And because marginalization increases the amount of consideration you're supposed to receive, the idea that being trans or non-binary catapults you on the oppression ladder, unquote.
I gotta get me one of those. Sorry. Continue.
Should we cut that?
We'll just find it in there and we can cut it if we want to.
Sure, fine.
I gotta get me one of them impression ladders.
Oh, God.
Sounds high quality.
Yeah, but, God, that's so weird.
It is weird.
But he's not the only one that thinks that.
No, he's not.
And it's not just in the LGBT community they think that. Think about the Hispanic community. They definitely think that. Think in the Black community. They also think something like that. They're taking a really, really bad lesson from white people to keep punching down on something to try and pull the ladder up behind them if they get any modicum of acceptance. Guys, it's not gonna work. Stop taking this lesson from us. It's really not gonna work.
Yeah, it seems like they all learned the same lesson, which was that if you are not on the top of the, quote, oppression ladder, then you deserve no consideration at all. And it seems like what they believe in to change this is simply an authoritarian leader on their side.
Kinda, maybe. Like, I'm not so sure there's like a belief or really genuine desire for like authoritarianism, at least with Greenwald and Taibbi. More so, it's a tolerance of it, almost this reciprocal tolerance to their own idiosyncrasies being tolerated by that authoritarian mindset. Like, Greenwald himself is more of a libertarian, and Taibbi is more of a apolitical thinker, whatever the fuck that is.
A person on the right who doesn't want to admit that they're in the coalition with the rest of the people on the right.
Sure. But there's a quote here also from page 239. Quote, Matt Taibbi's and Glenn Greenwald's conservative heel turns are the results of the complicated intersection between personal branding and material incentives, because their fame didn't protect them from criticism, harsh feedback hurt even more, and the arrogance wasn't something new, unquote. We'll get into it later, but I think there's a lot more intolerance from their allies at the time, the left, over their super weird things like eventually the trans hating from Greenwald or the sexism from Taibbi that pushed them out and had them become accepted by the people who they once hated on the right more than anything. But it could also be the money, for all I know. It could just be being contrarian, period. But we'll get into that later.
So then, why did leftists ever take these people seriously? Why should we take them seriously now, given what they became?
Well, that's because they actually did say some things that still ring true today. So, for instance, on page 53, there's a quote here. In his 2011 book, With Liberty and Justice for Some, Greenwald outlined a theory of American law and politics that was hard to refute, namely, that wealth and proximity to power are more important than actual legal rules and principles. Anyone living in the United States knows this, but what Greenwald especially detested was how American media, which should be opposing power and advocating for the law, collaborated with those in charge, unquote. 14 years later, do you think that's accurate?
Maybe.
So maybe he has a point. And remember also, Greenwald was heavily associated with Snowden and with the unveiling of the NSA spying on all of us. So he helped bring that out into the public. So he did a good thing there as well. And then further on in page 87, it's quoted here, despite his personal dislike of Trump, Greenwald was more fed up with liberals and the establishment. He claimed, not without justification, that these people were trying to whitewash not only the Democratic Party's culpability in U.S. crimes, but also the crimes of the American empire writ large. And they did so by arguing falsely that Trump was an exception to a long-standing and noble tradition, unquote. Again, fair point. Trump is not an exception. Trump is a manifestation of this undercurrent of frustration over the mono party. And for Taibbi, his work on the Rolling Stone was what helped him take off, where during the financial crisis back in 2008, on page 23, quote, he primarily targeted the big banks and the excesses of Wall Street, famously referring to Goldman Sachs as a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money, unquote.
Gross.
But true.
True. Yes, definitely true. Gross and true and a decent metaphor, but still gross.
Yes, but delightfully vivid, and it really sticks in your head. And then later on, Taibbi wrote on the Rolling Stone in March 29th of 2019 the following on why he was frustrated with the fixation on Russian electoral interference by the media. And this is on page 126. Quote, "After the election, instead of wondering where the anger came from, most of the press quickly pivoted to a new tale about a Russian plot to attack our democracy. This conveyed the impression that the election season we just lived through had been an aberration, thrown off the rails by an extraordinary espionage conspiracy between Trump and a cabal of evil foreigners. This narrative contradicted everything that Eoin Higgins had seen traveling across America in 2 years of covering the campaign. The overwhelming theme of that race in 2016, long before anyone even thought about Russia, was voter rage at the entire political system," unquote. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't any electoral interference from outside powers. What I will say, however, is that Taibbi has a point. There is a lot of rage against what is essentially an ineffective system. Remember, the Obama administration was behind way more drone strikes than a lot of other administrations. The Obama administration deported a lot of people. The Obama administration let the big banks off the hook after the crash. The Obama administration was not able to put through a single-payer healthcare system. The Obama administration was not able to fill a vacant Supreme Court justice position.
Thanks, Obama.
Exactly. Correct. So, again, Taibbi and Greenwald have grave sins. Many grave sins. We'll probably get into it later. But the reason why the left took them seriously and at minimum tolerated some of their slightly weirder idiosyncrasies was that they were saying things that were correct. They were right, at minimum, about this super narrow strip of overseeing and overviewing and reporting on what the American political system was. And quite honestly, the reason why we're doing this still is.
Yeah, I think that that Palmer Luckey quote that was included about how men like him are willing to use violence to maintain freedoms, and Peter Thiel's quote about maybe we should just let the Democrats win and overreach and then do a military coup. When you put those together, that is unbelievably chilling, especially given the definition of freedom they're using.
God, it is such a weird inversion and an extraordinarily selfish view of freedom. Can you hear the air quotes that I'm making right now? Take this quote from pages 227 and 228. Quote, "Despite what they claim, critics of cancel culture are not against censorship. Rather, they object to certain kinds of speech, the kind that's critical of them and their friends. Greenwald has fallen in with a crowd and ideology that holds progressive wrong-thinkers as the greatest threat to liberty, while politically powerful conservatives who are actually restraining speech are not a concern," unquote. That's one of the sins of Greenwald. This weird inversion of what freedom is, what corruption is in the American political system, and going off of Thiel. He said this in 2009, quote, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible," unquote. What a statement. There is so much to unpack there. It's part of this super weird neo-feudalistic view that tech bros like Thiel, Musk, Andreessen, Bezos, Zuckerberg, all of these assholes from Silicon Valley have towards this idea of what freedom is, what democracy is, what America is. And it's kind of like a rules for thee, not for me sort of mindset.
Yeah. This reminds me of Tim Snyder's definitions of positive versus negative freedom, or freedom to versus freedom from. It's their block that seems to believe that because they are the powerful and being restricted by institutions, that the only valid and real type of freedom is the latter, the freedom from restriction.
Right, precisely. It's kind of this almost aristocratic mindset.
Aristos!
Technoristos.
Don't say that. That makes me sad.
But that's the point here.
No, you're right. It makes me sad because you're correct.
So, on pages 150 and 151, in this so-called techno-optimist manifesto posted by Mark Andreessen in his blog in October of 2023, he claimed, quote, that technology, along with the force multiplier that is the capitalist market, has accelerated human development, unquote. Sure, in some metrics, woefully inadequate in others, but we'll get into that later. But as for the doubters and the ones who'd resist, you know, the rest of us who actually believe in a society, he described them as such, quote, our enemy is the ivory tower, the know-it-all, credentialed expert worldview, indulging in abstract theories, luxury beliefs, social engineering, disconnected from the real world, delusional, unelected, and unaccountable, playing God with everyone else's lives, with total insulation from the consequences. Unquote.
That literally describes Mark Andreessen and his friends.
Yes!
God damn it.
Would you like a healthy slab of irony across that statement?
No, I think I'm full.
Nope, sorry, you're gonna have this anyway. It's on the menu.
No! I don't like this restaurant.
And by the way, going off of this freedom from, they want this freedom from being critiqued. They have said, quote, the enemy is speech control and thought control. People on social media criticizing others. It's hard to read this quote without thinking of the backlash to Andreessen's infamous comments on India and colonialism or his touchy reaction to Twitter exchanges. Would you like to know what those are?
Yes, please. I hate Mark.
So, this is a quote from Mark Andreessen following India's decision to reject the 2016 Facebook Free Internet Project for infringing on net neutrality. He denounced, quote, another in a long line of economically suicidal decisions made by the Indian government against its own citizens. Anti-colonialism has been economically catastrophic for the Indian people for decades. Why stop now? Unquote. Yikes! Even Zuckerberg knew to distance himself.
Wasn't the Free Internet Project what triggered that genocide in Myanmar? Weren't they one of the pet projects?
I think so.
Because I was reading this isn't on the script, we can cut it out. But I was reading the Facebook book. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's by Sarah Wynne Williams, talking about her experience as one of their policy directors, and she goes into detail about their operations doing the Free Internet Project in Myanmar, and then having both the military junta and the rebels both being like, can you help us maybe commit genocide?
Oh, God.
And then they did.
Oh, God.
Like,
oh, no.
So clearly Andreessen either didn't know about that or much more likely just doesn't give a shit.
No, he doesn't give a shit.
Fuck me. That makes me so mad. Because like, oh, it's been hurting you for decades. Oh, really? Really? You think not having a genocide is bad for us? Dumb bitch?
Oh.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
But
back to the script. Back to me not being infuriated at my former bosses.
But regardless, like, this combined with Thiel's earlier anger over his being outed as gay, and I think more specifically for him, accused of being mentally unstable, which led to the whole Hulk Hogan scandal. That was fun. It seems to be part of tech billionaires being exceptionally thin-skinned folks who have more money than God. That's a super bad combination, by the way. And
reminds me of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Honestly, it really does.
A little bit. I think this quote sums it up best. This is from page 69. Nice. We can, we can cut that out later.
I didn't even see that in the script. That's so funny.
There's this quote. Journalist and podcaster Michael Hobbs put it succinctly in a tweet on April 27th, 2022. I think we'll look back on the last decade as a time when social media gave previously marginalized groups the ability to speak directly to elites, and, as a result, elites lost their minds, unquote. That feels kind of true, doesn't it? Like, look, I'm not a fan of social media. At all. I think this was a bad idea. But this part is true. It did, at least for that brief golden age, especially in the early 2010s, give marginalized groups the power to call out the elite on their bullshit, and the elites did not take that well.
Yeah, something that frustrates me a lot about this attitude from these people in particular is the keen hypocrisy. Like, this is a cabal of mostly immigrants made wildly wealthy by the American system. And now they're trying to change it so nobody else, especially immigrants, can follow in their footsteps.
I think that hypocrisy comes from this super deep cynicism and a wholehearted embrace of the principles of capitalism, which is to acquire as much capital as possible, no matter what. This entire worldview is effectively exposed for the damage it does on this quote from pages 152 and 153 by Ed Zittrain in December of 2023. Quote, as I noted when digesting his techno-optimist manifesto, Andreessen is a deeply cynical man, intent on spreading monetizable software into every crevice of the economy, building sickly, unsustainable companies that continually return to carrier to relieve themselves of the disease. Andreessen's focus on hyper-growth companies was not intended to make the world better, but to create more dependencies, like Uber and Lyft destroying local transit, or DoorDash eating the margins of every restaurant it serves, under the auspice of disruption, unquote. This is just the most profoundly selfish, the most profoundly blind to everybody but oneself view you could take on building a new society. It's not even a society. It is a way to enrich yourself more than anything, and to pull the ladder up behind you to maintain that ill-gotten wealth.
Yeah, and what is with their contempt for government-funded projects? Thiel's Palantir was wholly funded by the CIA for years.
Yep.
SpaceX wouldn't exist without the privatization of American spaceflight. Tesla would have been out of business 10 years ago if it weren't for selling renewable energy offset credits.
Yeah.
They must know this! So the strategy only makes sense if they're attempting to protect their empires at the expense of American industrial agility.
They know this. They do. From pages 155 and 156, quote, one way to think of the ideology, writer Edward Oguiso Jr. told Higgins, is as a new form of politics, one that emphasizes the need for continued relationships with the military, border security, and the surveillance and police state. That's why techno-optimism necessarily obfuscates the relationship between the tech revolution and supply chains. The new products and new forms of communication have much in common with the former capitalist expansions, particularly the imperial forms of resource extraction that have defined the global economic landscape for centuries. There's noise about no slavery in supply chains and no suicide nets needed in Chinese factories. And yet, within that new politics, slavery and poor factory conditions still exist. They've just been outsourced to even less fortunate countries, unquote. This isn't democracy that they're going for. This isn't even close to a liberal or even a normal society that they intend on creating. This is authoritarian techno-aristocracy. This is some weird wind back the clock to feudalism.
But with iPhones.
With iPhones.
Oh, God. Feudalism with iPhones.
This is feudalism.
That is not a TV show I would watch.
Feudalism, brought to you by Apple.
No.
Autocracy, brought to you by Amazon. Delivered right to your doorstep.
No, keep it at the factory.
But
Jesus Christ.
There's, earlier in the book, there's also this quote how the techno bros consider themselves as the makers and everybody else the takers. And it's described pretty well in these quotes from pages 33 and 34. Silicon Valley leaders, quote, subscribe to a libertarian, non-political politics that uplights meritocratic hyper-individualism, personified in the people who make the products that drive the tech sector's economic engine. In this worldview, the rich men at the top are creators and makers. Unfortunately, these great men are set upon by the machinations of a great, lazy underclass who only want to take without working. But meritocratic libertarianism in tech is an illusion. The history of Silicon Valley is not one of grit and working independently, but rather of working with the state, specifically the military-industrial complex, unquote. As described earlier. And by the way, let's get into for a moment this whole makers versus takers ideology or mindset, let's call it. Let's use Elon Musk as an example, because we love talking about Elon Musk here.
Love.
Absolutely love it. Tell me something. What has Elon actually made?
Problems?
Okay, what has he...
Besides that, just about jack shit.
Yeah, like, let's say for the sake of argument, back in the day, we were saying he was a genius for having come up with the ideas of Tesla. Not true, but let's say that he came up with the ideas. How much of Tesla did he actually make?
He bought that company.
Yeah.
I thought. He bought into, like, the two inventors, he bought it from, and then they left because he's obnoxious.
Yeah. How much of SpaceX did he make, really?
I've seen him talk about orbital mechanics. I know the answer is nothing.
So, by that logic, considering so many other people, the designers, the inventors, the engineers, the factory workers, the people who are driving the trucks, the Teamsters, everybody who's actually doing shit on the ground to make Tesla and SpaceX a thing. Describe to me again, like just explain to me, how are they the takers and Musk is the maker? Because, correct me if I'm wrong here, it seems like Musk is more of a taker here, right?
Yeah, I actually, I had a friend who started a social media company in around 2017-ish, and their thesis was to, and I quote, build a platform where people can communicate anonymously while building and maintaining their reputation. And they raised like $2 million from groups associated with Thiel and other people in this cabal, and now that I think about it, that must have been directly related to this rightward shift that was happening at the time in the industry, and they just didn't know it.
Well, the timing is frankly damning evidence enough.
Yeah, ironically, it ended up failing because the opinions that people wanted to share pseudo-anonymously were horrible and poorly thought out, and the founder turned out to be the same breed of neo-Nazi authoritarian that Thiel and Musk are.
Yeah, on a micro level, you could say it failed, but it did its job of continuing to push the vibe, question mark, for lack of better terms, of the rightward shift of social media and the control of the narrative from the billionaires over our own discourse.
Yeah, I've been very, very slowly picking through a long tome on the financials and politics of the Third Reich, as exciting as that is.
Yeah, that sounds just absolutely riveting. How many months has it taken you?
I think 2 months in so far, and I'm less than halfway through.
Oh, God.
But it's very, very striking how similar the attitudes of their leading industrialists were to ours today. Scarily enough, I see significant parallels in the rapid industrial innovation in industrial chemistry that gave rise to the hydrogenous technocratic class. I use that term because that's the chemical process that you use to create a lot of the chemicals, is hydrogenation. And they ultimately put the Third Reich into power and believed that they were correct because of the technology that they were able to create. And they used that presumptuousness to dictate its policies. And the rapid innovations in like industrial metallurgy for like UV laser and nanoetching and all that transistor stuff has given rise to the current class of semiconductor technocrats. And they're exactly the same in their inclinations.
I'm sure you've heard this phrase before. History doesn't repeat.
But it rhymes.
There you go. You got it. Yeah, it sounds like this is happening right now, and it's going even further than what they could have possibly hoped for back in the Third Reich. These guys, remember how I keep talking about feudalism, neo-feudalism, techno-aristocracy, and all of that? These guys want to build their own fiefs. Take these quotes. I'm just going to read through all of this and get your reactions to them. From pages 216 and 217, quote, Balaji Srinivasian's idea of a new startup nation, the network state, is perhaps the natural endpoint of this cycle of politics. The former A16Z executive has called for Silicon Valley to leave the United States, creating a virtual exit to a new society where citizenship is defined by ownership. And the frontier attitude is supplemented by crowdfunding.
Oh, okay. So a medieval fief with a landed gentry.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Continuing. No roughing it for Srinivasan. This new land is idealized, are you ready for this, as a new Israel.
I was going to say that. I was like, of course they mean Israel.
It's self-fulfilling choice, as Israel is a militarized and paranoid ethno-state built on exploitation. He even called his view of a new state something like tech Zionism. Are you getting the message yet?
No, thank you.
And
no technical Israel, please.
I'm not done. And called on his supporters to wear gray shirts to be identified. So fucking weird.
Oh, that is so Nazi.
Yes!
That is brown shirt shit. What?
Are you getting
no.
the message?
That's not what I wanted to hear.
As Gil Duran wrote at the New Republic in April of 2024, Grays would also receive special ID cards providing access to exclusive, gray-controlled sectors of the city. In addition, the Grays would make an alliance with the police department, funding weekly policemen's banquets to win them over, unquote.
So a civil paramilitary that bribes the cops.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome idea, Balaji. Super smart.
And he's not the only one. We're going to go back to Mark Andreessen, page 218. Quote, making new cities excites Andreessen too. According to reporting from Puck, Andreessen has privately described his next big project as something else entirely. California forever. A controversial plan backed by his firm and other tech billionaires to build a brand new city in Solano County. Flannery Associates Incorporated, a group of tech venture capitalists and other powerful investors led by former Goldman Sachs investor Jan Sramick, is buying up land at a rate of roughly 11,000 acres a year. Unquote. So, I haven't played the game Cyberpunk. I feel like this is Cyberpunk.
I mean, the That was basically their whole thesis was, what if America put techno-feudalism? Oh no.
Neo-company towns. They're bringing company towns back along with feudalism. Is this real life?
It shouldn't be. Honestly, I wonder if, like, at some point they're gonna run into the complication of religion. Like, one of the most fascinating quotes from Teal is, wokeism is like ultra-Christianity, referring to its focus on the downtrodden. Now, obviously his base doesn't believe in, like, the focusing on the downtrodden version of Christianity either, but how long can technocratic atheists really cooperate with evangelical theologists? They used religious rhetoric to gain power. I do not know how they plan to rid themselves of that.
Look, they're going to cooperate so long as there's mutual interest between the groups. And I wish I could say otherwise, but I don't think that's going to be ruptured anytime soon, at the very least from the evangelicals. Now, you must have seen this recently. This notion that empathy is a sin. Let that simmer. So, remember when, during the national prayer service right after Trump's inauguration, Episcopal Bishop Marianne Boudet, I apologize for mispronouncing, called for mercy from Trump? A conservative pastor, Ben Garrett, responded with the following tweet, quote, "Do not commit the sin of empathy. This snake is God's enemy and yours too. She hates God and his people. You need to properly hate in response. She is not merely deceived, but is a deceiver. Your eye shall not pity." Unquote.
Man, they really don't read the Bible, do they?
Look, full disclosure, I'm a lapsed Catholic. It's been a minute since I've been in church. I'm pretty sure that Jesus said something about your enemies.
I thought that was, like, his whole thing.
Okay, look. Here, let me take out my New International Version of the Bible. I can't believe this. Let me set the stage for you. This leftist, lapsed Catholic, has been so pissed off, he's gonna quote from the Bible.
Yeah, we're quoting scripture at a pastor. What have we become?
Let me just go to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 43 to 48. Quote, "You have heard it that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." Unquote. I want to emphasize again, I had to quote the Bible to point out that empathy is a sin. Bullshit!
Where did he even come up with that?
Old Testament shit.
Fair enough. The Old Testament God does, like, spend an entire story beating up his best friend because the devil says that his best friend won't denounce him.
That's Joe, by the way.
I know.
But look. Yes, that was in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. But we are talking about Catholics and Protestant Christians and other kinds of Christians here who primarily go from the New Testament. I just quoted from the New Testament here. I just quoted from the Lord and Savior. If we're going to say that the Lord and Savior said this, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Ultimately, though, through either self-indoctrination or just Overton drift, they all drink from the same poison of everyone on my side is a maker in good, while everyone in opposition is a taker in bad. It makes me wonder if any of them even believe it, or if it's just a means to an end.
It can easily be both, because, really, what's the end result either way? Money and power. this is what these techno-feudalists crave.
Very true.
And they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And they're replicating people in their mom's basement being red-pilled. There's a quote here from commentator Mehdi Hassan, who told Owen, quote, "He wonders whether the tech leaders are funding the right for their own material gain or for ideological reasons. How much is it a cynical, calculated strategy? And how much is it that these billionaires are a warning to the public that the more time you spend in the dregs of the internet, the more you can become radicalized?" Hassan doesn't think it's solely a calculated move. There's too much indication in their histories that these men were already headed toward a conservative politics. It's beyond parody how they narcissistically see themselves as prophets of a new post-woke age. You take away the millions or billions, you take away their tech companies, you take away whatever achievements they have in that field, Hassan said. And these guys are nothing different than a young guy sitting in his parents' basement getting red-pilled, unquote. These guys are losers.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that necessarily as an insult, though I kind of do. I really hate them. But think about all of the backstories of all of these billionaires. Andreessen, Musk. These guys are outcasts. These guys don't fit into society. These guys feel slighted by society. These guys can't take criticism from society. These guys don't work well with society, period. They just happen, unlike other losers, to have unbelievable access to wealth and power to reshape a society that, quite frankly, I think they hate more suited to their needs. And so, ideologically, they probably believe it to a certain extent, but maybe ideologically, they don't give a shit. They just want money, and they just want power, and they just want the mean people on the internet to go away.
Yeah, it's all so performative. Like, it was very notable to me how the author refers to the turn to the right for all these figures as heel turns.
Yep.
That's a WWE reference. And it references the bad guys in those stories. Those are called heels, and they're in opposition to the good guys or the face. Mm-hmm. And it highlights the theatricality of all of this. I think that's part of what makes it so hard to take all this seriously.
Yeah, you can see the theatricality of American politics going back to 2016. Donald Trump is a reality TV star. I use star very loosely here.
Star and producer, most importantly.
More
just
so
to say he knows how to both act and create this horrible crap.
Yes, but my God, he was entertaining. My God, to a certain extent, he is still entertaining despite his decline.
Yeah, except for that really, truly depressing parade that I think even he kind of hated. I didn't want to bring that up in this, but his face during the parade was one of the most heartwarming things I've seen this year. I'm just like, well, they're going to think I'm a weak little bitch, I guess.
It's amazing how that parade made me look with admiration towards countries like Russia and North Korea.
They got soldiers marching in clean lockstep lines. We got some wandering ass bitches. And one lonely tank with one guy kind of looking around, wondering what's going on.
You know, the interesting thing about that whole parade thing is that if it were just, and I mean this truly, just a historical showcase of the U.S. Army from the Revolutionary War to the modern day, fine, okay.
Yeah, it would have been a fine history parade, but
still a little gross in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean lame regardless.
Super lame regardless, but you could understand it to a certain extent. But come on. We all know that it was done on that day because it just so happened to be Trump's birthday.
And I didn't see any of the really cool stuff we have. No Predator drones, no F-35s, no Blackhawks, none of the real... I mean, I'm sure the Predator drones were there, but we didn't see them.
No, the Predator drones were over LA.
Yeah, fair enough. Watching all the rest of us being like, you better not interrupt my dad's parade.
But the point is that, like, American politics nowadays is theatrics. It's a show. It's pretend.
World's most expensive reality TV show.
And that's... We make fun of it. We really do make fun of it. But it's not only sad... It's not only depressing, it's actually kind of scary because this is our society that we're talking about. We're not taking our society seriously anymore. We're not taking each other seriously anymore. We're not taking those in power seriously anymore. We're regarding those in power as reality TV stars at best. That's really bad, guys. Like, look, I don't take the Democrats seriously. I sure as shit don't take the Republicans seriously. I don't want to be in this position where I'm not taking them seriously because these are the people who, at least allegedly, have access to the levers of power.
And spend my taxes.
Spending my taxes, your taxes, everybody else's taxes, and have a profound effect on everybody in this country. And beyond that, they... because of American imperialism, have a profound impact on society as a whole. Ooh.
All right, back to script. We gotta.
Back to script.
we gotta, because we still have like 4 pages to go.
No, but back to script. Page 245. John Schwartz, who worked with Taibbi at Racket and Greenwald at The Intercept as a writer, told Eoin that their role, Taibbi and Greenwald, was, quote, a symptom of the collapse of democracy. People used to be able to coalesce politically around unions and newspapers and functioning political parties. But today, all of those mediating institutions have been crushed. And now regular humans who care about the world often, instead of becoming meaningfully, personally involved in politics, develop weird parasocial relationships with reporters and pundits, unquote. This is part of this collapse of the fabric of our society and why we can't take it seriously anymore. And that's connected with the rise of social media, where we have created these parasocial relationships with influencers, with celebrities, with authority figures. It, at the risk of sounding like old man yells at the sky, back in my day, you had a better relationship with your politician. You actually went to a town hall. You actually asked them questions and they actually responded to you. But it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. So is that why all of these people, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, is that why they sold out? Is it just because they'd prefer to profit and watch the world burn?
It's complicated. It's not a good answer, but it is complicated. So, for instance, in regards to Matt Taibbi, there's a quote here from Jerry, a reporter with The Appeal, on page 222. Quote, "You don't have to take a word of what Matt Taibbi says seriously nowadays. Him, Greenwald, Cenk, etc. are among the few people who thought you could get rich and famous and buy a boat from leftist journalism. And they've just finally pivoted to where the real money is," unquote. And you gotta admit, the right pays the bills a whole lot better than the left does, because the right has all the money.
Yeah, the right also has a lot more propaganda to spew.
For Greenwald, one way to look at his rightward pivot, you could see it in pages 228 and 229, quote, "frustration and anger with failed liberal politics which resulted in allying himself with reactionaries. His rejection of Russiagate fueled his political alliance with grievance-driven conservatives who see the Russian state as a Christian nation under attack from the left, rather than a complex country with competing interests to the United States. Their social conservatism has rubbed off on him, evidenced by his comments on the Great Replacement, shudder, and his attacks on trans people, unquote. Further, there's another quote, for all the protestations of worthier, loftier goals like free speech, the reality is that this group, Taibbi, Greenwald, Rogan, is only interested in the same right-wing issues as every other conservative. Low taxes, starvation-level welfare, and increasing their own net worth. A sad army of recruits desperate to avoid being seen as run-of-the-mill Republicans are presenting themselves as edgy, hip, and different. So all of this is building up towards them selling out because it's just more profitable to, and to take the money from the billionaires and not criticize them. But perhaps this quote sums it up best. From page 246, quote, the full answer to why Greenwald and Taibbi changed is not as straightforward as they did it for the money. But it's not that either. The truth is likely somewhere between the natural conservatism that comes with age and comfort, which Greenwald so artfully described in relation to Taibbi, and the motivation to appease the people paying the bills, unquote.
So what are we supposed to do? We have Tammy Bruce saying, be scared of the left. And buy a gun. We have Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson saying, let's build abundance. Change the mindset without any actual clarity on what we're supposed to do. What does Eoin Higgins say we should do?
He is, frankly, brutally honest with us. Quote, often with a book like this, you're expected to add a here's what to do section or some call to action. Call back to Ezra Klein. But there's no micro-level action that can be taken to solve this problem. The only thing that could break the power billionaires have over our political and media institutions is to make the concept of a billionaire itself extinct. No one should have so much money that they can use it to influence the political process and control the information the public receives, unquote.
Okay, Carl.
Look, it's not exactly inspiring, but tell me how he's wrong.
Can't.
You can't. He's not wrong. This is not something that you or I can single-handedly fix. Even though we're trying right now with this dumb as hell podcast.
Baby steps.
Hit like and subscribe. But this is something where we do need to change a mindset. We as a society need to change how we view those in power. And maybe the best way to do that going off of this book is to go through a little bit of a thought experiment. So walk with me, will you? Not literally, stay, but walk with me through this idea. An individual has $1 billion. Let's just say $1 billion.
No.
No. Hear me
I'm
out.
Kidding. Continue.
Hear me out. What do you do with that $1 billion? Like, how do you, as an individual, spend that $1 billion? What's the first thing you would do if you had $1 billion?
I don't know. Buy a president. That's what I would. I mean, with $1 billion, you probably couldn't actually do that, which is kind of a good thing. But I mean, at some point, you could buy a house, you could buy another house, you could buy 3 boats, you could buy 5 boats. But at some point, what you buy is power.
Yes, because you're starting to get where I'm going with this. Why do you need multiple houses? Why do you need multiple yachts?
That's true. I could only be on one house and one yacht at a time. Why would I need 18?
And by the way, if you're buying a single house, why do you need a mansion?
Yeah, I can only be in, at most, a couple rooms at once if I really stretch.
And let's say you're a car enthusiast. Why do you need, with $1 billion, the ability to buy what basically amounts to a parking garage full of designer cars?
That you could only drive one of at most at once.
The point that I'm trying to get at here with the idea of what you can do with $1 billion is that you can't even really comprehend what $1 billion does for you as an individual, trying to buy individual things to enhance your individual life. Can you even comprehend that amount of money? Like, you can comprehend $1,000, right? Like, you can visualize it as a pile right in front of you, right?
Ish, yeah.
Try visualizing $10,000.
Well, that's easy. That's just one stack.
Okay. But then let's make that bigger. $100,000.
Well, that's 10 stacks.
500,000.
I see where you're
A
going.
million.
Yeah.
10 million. 100 million. $500 million. What does $1 billion in physical currency look like?
A pallet of $100 bills? Question mark? I'd have to guess. And if we move away from something as comically valued as $100 bills, I don't even know.
Exactly. We don't even know what $1 billion is anymore. And that's where I'm getting at. Like, the only thing that you can realistically do with $1 billion is to move beyond your individual life and start influencing the lives of others around you.
Buying power and control.
Yeah. You are influencing your community, your town, your city, your state, your country. You can start influencing the world with $1 billion. Why? Why would you need that amount of money constantly coming in, by the way? Like, this is not a static amount of wealth. This is a continuous flow of wealth into your bank account, or multiple bank accounts, let's be real here, or into various kinds of assets, both liquid and non-liquid. Just
Scrooge McDuck-like money piles, yeah.
Why do billionaires exist?
Because we don't have taxes high enough. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, but why do we need billionaires? What do billionaires actually do?
Not to answer your question in an annoying way, but the American answer to that question is do what disabled institutions cannot. Because in America, we religiously believe in the power of the great man, the man who will lead us into the future, the man who must be appropriated as much power as possible so the foolish takers under him don't destroy society.
Now let me ask you a question to that. Does that sound like democracy to you?
No, it does not.
Does that sound like a functioning society to you?
Depends on if you would define 13th century England as functioning, but maybe in a one king everybody has the plague sort of way.
It's just mind-boggling to me, the very concept of a billionaire. And I was going over it this morning as I was thinking about this whole concept before we recorded the podcast. The only reason a billionaire would exist is that they have fairly ruthlessly acquired that wealth. Not worked for it.
Not created it.
Not earned it.
Took it.
Took it. And we had this notion back in the late aughts, early 2010s, that there were benevolent billionaires out there. The charitable billionaires. Bill Gates, for instance.
Elon Musk pretended to be one.
Elon Musk.
I don't know what happened to him.
Heck,
ketamine.
We had that about Zuckerberg, or we had that about Bezos. We thought that these billionaires would use their wealth like Carnegie did, because let's be real, Carnegie, oh God, he owned way too much fucking money. But he was also the one that kickstarted the library system in America. So
now, granted, he did that by busting every steel union in America, but we'll move along.
Correct. Correct. We do have to note that. But he nonetheless used his wealth to be a sort of patron for the arts and whatnot, or a patron to culture, a patron to humanity.
Yes, very much in the same style of Warren Buffett pledging, 96 or 97% of his wealth after he dies to charity.
Yeah, but even so, he could also just give back that money while he's alive.
Oh, that would be crazy. How would he do that?
He could literally just give it all away.
I was joking.
I know.
I know he knows.
I know. But the point is that these billionaires are already in the mindset of an almost psychotic and sociopathic need to take. They take and take and take from us, from me, from you, from our loved ones, from our society.
And from our long-dead ancestors if they can.
And they have. And they will. And they're taking it from our successors, from our children. They are taking it from everyone. Why? Because why do you need to go to space, for instance?
Yeah, why do you need to go not just to space, but to Mars? A place with an atmosphere basically non-existent and made of a gas you can't breathe, and dust so sharp it will make your lungs bleed.
And it's not for science. We've already gotten into that with the Abundance book. It's never been about for science. It's always been for a selfish reason. And that's the point with all of these stupid dick rockets that are going into our atmosphere and into orbit and continuing to pollute the low Earth orbit with even more satellites and more space junk that might make it impossible at some point to even get out of here if we absolutely had to. Not the point, doesn't matter. The reason that the billionaires exist is to compete with one another. It's kind of like, why do you need so many cars? Because you want to be the one with the most cars.
Yes, and so you can go to your friend who only has 500 cars and say, how many cars do you have? Because I have 502.
And why do we need a trillionaire?
Yeah, why are they all fighting over being the first trillionaire? What a stupid thing to fight over.
And you know that once they eventually make it to trillionaire, I hope not, but if they do make it to trillionaire, we're going to have to start talking about a quadrillionaire.
Oh yeah, well it'll be who's going to be the first tens trillionaire, and then it's going to be who's going to be the first hundreds. It never ends. There is no end to numbers.
There is no end to the numbers when your entire philosophy is line must go hockey stick.
Does that make you feel any particular way?
It makes me feel immensely and depressingly exasperated.
Almost perpetually exasperated? All right, and now for the section we like to call our denouement. So, first question, who is this book for?
For once, it's for you and me. And it's for folk trying to figure out where the hell we came from, where the hell we are now, and what the hell do we do now in regards to tech billionaires taking control of journalism and social media in general.
Second question, who wrote this book?
Per the book jacket, Eoin Higgins is a journalist and historian from New England, and his work has appeared in a lot of publications like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Intercept, the New Republic, the Nation, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Common Dreams, The Outline, Splinter, Deadspin, so many others. This dude is a bona fide leftist. He knows what he's talking about.
Third question, why was this book written?
To essentially expose what's going on behind the scenes of journalism and social media in general, as I alluded to in the first question, and show how the billionaires are taking control of the discourse in a way that prevents people from basically criticizing them and shifting the narrative towards continually enriching them and continuing to push the Overton window further and further and further to the right.
And our last question, should you read this book?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please read this book.
It's very good.
This is actually, for once, a book that is not only well written in that you're going to be able to go through it without being too mired in the mumbo jumbo political terminology and whatnot. you're also going to get a story. You're going to get stories about where these people came from. And these are going to be nuanced stories, talking about their lives, talking about their backgrounds, talking about what they've said that provides insights into what they believe, or at least what they want you to believe. This is a book that, for once, is insightful, not just in American politics and society today, but in the people running it. And hopefully it'll help you move further away from this unbelievably mind-boggling binary system that we're in right now. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Perpetually Exasperated. If today's conversation got you thinking a little bit deeper and a little more exasperated about everything, we want to hear from you. Give us a like, leave a review, share the show. Please send your feedback, thoughts, or questions you'd like us to answer in your comments.
Next time, we'll be reading and talking about The War on Warriors, Behind the Betrayal of the Men Who Keep Us Free, by now Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, described in part by HarperCollins as a book which, quote, uncovers the deep roots of our dysfunctional society that has forgotten the men who take risks, cut through red tape, and get their hands dirty.
Until then, be critical, be skeptical, and remember, it's okay to be exasperated and to think outside the binary political spectrum presented to us. Stay safe, friends.